the heart of South Asia to the crossroads of Central Asia, from the turbulent Middle East and North Africa to the power corridors of the West, where narratives collide, perspectives matter and stories connect. This is Beyond Borders and I am Umar Khalid. But during the course of the show, what we'll do is decipher a world without borders and boundaries and bring you stories that matter in this changing scenario. We'll begin with the top stories of the day, or as we call them, region lines. We begin from Turkiye, where Pakistan and the Afghan Taliban talks are underway to evolve a joint monitoring mechanism to curb cross-border terrorism from Afghanistan. Speaking to reporters, Pakistan's Defence Minister Khaja Asif says the Afghan Taliban should work diligently for the restoration of peace and stability on both sides of the border. He has reiterated Pakistan's call that Afghan Taliban should curb cross-border terrorism into Pakistan from its side. Moving on to the South Asian region, where Kashmiris on both sides of the line of control and across the world are observing Jammu Martyrs Day today to reaffirm their resolve to continue the struggle for their UN-recognized right to self-determination. The 6th of November marks one of the darkest chapters in Kashmir's history, when thousands of Muslims were massacred by the forces of Dogra under Maharaja Hari Singh, the Indian Army and the armed RSS extremists in different parts of the Jammu region in 1947. While Pakistan's connectivity drive places strong emphasis on the Belt and Road Initiative and CPEC as major game changers, reshaping the trade and infrastructure corridors across Asia. The emerging nexus between the trade and climate change underscores how environmental risks are increasingly influencing regional economic cooperation, calling for sustainable climate resilience connectivity frameworks. Also, the 8th China International Import Expo has kicked off in Shanghai. The Expo features over 4,100 overseas exhibitors from 155 countries, regions and international organizations, with a total exhibition area of exceeding 430,000 square meters, which is now a record in scale. Pakistan is showcasing its vibrant industrial and cultural landscape through the participation of 20 companies under the Pakistan Pavilion. Lastly, in the Middle East, Israeli forces have killed more than Palestinians in Gaza and have violated the ceasefire again, as the United States shared a draft resolution on President Donald Trump's peace plan with the 10 elected members of the UN Security Council. A U.S. official said that representatives of Egypt, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkiye and the United Arab Emirates will join Washington, showing clear regional support. We'll begin, of course, with the top story of the day coming from the South Asian region, and that concerns the third round of the Istanbul dialogue that is going on in Turkey as we speak between the Pakistani and the Afghan sides. The previous talks were held, but no conclusive detail or result came out of it. And of course, the mediators are doing their best to somehow come to a conclusion that is beneficial for both the Pakistani and the Afghan Taliban side. Of course, Pakistan side has only one thing in its favor. What it wants is that the Afghan Taliban curb or stop the influx of terrorism from the Afghan soil into Pakistan. We've been joined by Zahir Sherazi. He's a senior journalist. He's right here with us in the studios. We've also been joined by Amer Sultan. He's the editor of TRT World, and he joins us all the way from Istanbul. We'll begin with you, Zahir Saab. Given Pakistan's constant stance that the Afghan soil must not be used for terrorism against Pakistan, what concrete mechanisms, in your point of view, need to be discussed in Istanbul to ensure that the monitoring and the verification of cross-border militant movements cedes?
Thank you very much, Umar. Perhaps Pakistan has only 2 points to discuss, and perhaps they are sticking to it. First of all, our western border, which remained volatile because of the militants' infiltration across the border. And the second thing was that this region should not be allowed to be used by a hostile country like the Pakistan's arch rival India as a forward surveillance and spying base against Pakistan. So these are the 2 important issues, and these are very justified demand which Pakistan is making. Otherwise, we don't have anything to do with what the Afghan Taliban regime is doing, with whom they are interacting, how they are expanding their trade, they are expanding their ties. So this is not of our concern. I think the previous talks in Doha and then Istanbul, I think there was still a lot of mistrust.
All right.
Because
but the mistrust exists.
Still exists, because I think, you know, our Defense Minister Khwaja Asif is not optimistic about the talks. A number of experts you would be speaking to, I think they are still pessimistic that this thing is not going to work. But yes, there are two very important positive signs. If Turkey and Doha, they agree to be active guarantors, and some kind of penalty mechanism is imposed on the countries who are violating. Either we are not violating anything, because when there is an attack, we are going to respond. So this is now still.
But you know, this has to be hammered into the Afghan Taliban regime. They need to understand what is happening. And the fact is that they don't understand the reality of the exact situation, or they don't want to understand.
No, actually, Umar, they do understand. They are using it as a bargaining chip to get leverages, to pressurize Pakistan in one way or the other.
Leverage? What kind of bargaining chip? I fail to understand, because the fact is, Zahir Saab, that Pakistan has done whatever it could as far as Afghanistan is concerned, and the Afghan Taliban regime knows that very well. We've also been joined by Amer Sultan. He's a correspondent for TRT and a senior editor as well. Thank you very much, Amer, to have joined us all the way from Istanbul. Now, good to see you. Amer, Istanbul is hosting the important parties, the mediators as well, and this is the third round of these talks. Are you optimistic?
The hopes are low from all the sides, including both the parties who are included in the talks and also the mediators. I managed to speak with some of the diplomats from mediation countries, and they are saying that expectations are low, but still there is a hope. And because this third round of talks, basically they will review the implementation of commitments which were agreed in the second round of talks. And also in this round of talks, they will try to establish modalities for the modalities to establish a mechanism for verification and monitoring mechanism, because this is the Pakistan's holy demand, that Pakistan wants no terrorism, or Afghan territories should not be used, must not be used against Pakistan, and they just want commitments. And commitments, when the Pakistan talks about the commitments means verifiable monitoring system, that they can verify and implement what Afghan Taliban are doing to implement whatever has been agreed. So we can still say that there is a hope, and there is a still, because these negotiations means hope. If there is a talk, so it means we can expect that there will be because even during the last round of talks, there were really intense, and even at times everyone was talking about that there is no results. But at the end of the day, talks continue, and with the efforts of both Turkey and Qatar, somehow they managed to agree upon continuation of the ceasefire, and also they agreed in principle to establish a monitoring and verification system. So hopefully this time both Pakistan and Afghan Taliban representative will agree to these things.
All right. I mean, I'd also like to understand, you said you've talked to the ambassadors from the different countries, the mediator countries, and that there's a lot of cautious optimism that goes around. And I understand because looking at the previous talks and how they ended also, the whole scenario is very superfluous as to how things will move forward. But I'd like to also understand from you, Zahir Sherazi Saab, how central is the whole core issue of Fitna al-Khawarij, TTP, their influx into Pakistan territories in all of these talks?
I think this is still a very serious issue, and now you must have seen the other day, like letters have started surfacing, open documentary proof that the Afghan intelligence officials, they are facilitating the TTP militants crossing the border on Bajor side, also in north and south Waziristan, and we have seen a number of these people, they were eliminated on the zero line of the border. So after this pressure is building up, the Taliban are now, they are adopting multi-pronged strategy. They are trying to push most of these terrorist elements back into Pakistani territory, so they can prove that their presence was alleged by
Pakistan. Why are they doing this? I mean, I fail to understand why they are doing. What will they gain from all of this?
Well, actually, they are. I think they are doing suicide. Their people are really annoyed. They don't have any narrative to do. They don't have anything to offer their own Afghan people. They are really, upset with their policies. There is no girls' education, no human right, no women rights. So obviously you don't have the money to do. The important thing is that perhaps they are using this. You were asking that what leverage they want. They are using it as a political currency to eke out some money they have demanded from Pakistan for the relocation of these terrorist elements.
This currency, the fact remains that how can you use this as leverage? How can you use terrorism as leverage?
Well, actually, they are using it. The United Nations, United States, they have declared BLA, TTP, and other militant groups as terrorist organizations. So how come they are supporting and they are sheltering those elements? There is a UN report that more than 6,000 TTP fighters are there. Their houses are there. Their terrorist camps are being run by Al Qaeda and all these ISK militants. So this is open. I think this is the time.
This is an open secret, but the fact is also that this open secret needs to be now closed once and for all, and everybody knows what is happening, and still the Afghan Taliban say, oh, nothing to do with us, Pakistan's internal problem. All right, before I come to you, I'd like to ask Amer something. Amer, the Turkish-Qatari mediation framework has helped maintain this fragile ceasefire for the moment between both the sides. How long can they continue to do so? Will they be able to ensure accountability? How realistically can they do that in your point of view?
This is what is Pakistan's demand. Like, Pakistan is saying that we need a tangible action, the tangible action from Afghanistan Taliban side. And tangible action means that if they can do action against TTP or all the other terrorists in their territory, we will provide them whatever technically or otherwise help needed, we will provide them. If they can't do it, then Pakistan is willing to help them eliminate the terrorism from their territory, and Pakistan is willing to go into their territory and help the Afghan Taliban to do so. And in all this process, what Pakistan is demanding from the day one, Pakistan is demanding that we want a clear mechanism, verifiable system, so that we want, because Pakistan's stance is clear. They want to eliminate all the terrorist activities originating from Afghanistan soil, and they want a safe Afghanistan, and at the same time they want a peaceful Pakistan as well. So the problems comes here when even Zahir Shah Sherazi was talking about the same thing, that when it comes to Pakistan, Pakistan has a clear-cut mandate and they have a clear-cut policy that we want to eliminate terrorism in whichever form it is, we want to eliminate it. But the problems come when we comes to Taliban. You can't say that Taliban is just, we always say that representatives from different Taliban groups. And when we say Taliban groups, there are even...
That is what leads to uncertainties when it comes to the future of any process, and in this case, it is the peace talks. Thank you very much, Amer Sultan, to have joined us all the way from Istanbul, from TRT World. That was Amer Sultan. Zahir Shah Sherazi, border security mechanisms, infiltration of terrorist elements into Pakistan. How optimistic or cautiously optimistic are you from these rounds of talks?
Well, I think, first of all, the Afghan Taliban are not accepting the TTP or the BLA as terrorist groups. This is a very serious issue because they feel they have some political differences with Pakistan. So this narrative is very bad, and I think this is a kind of mistrust which Pakistan do have on the Afghan Taliban. Then there is a serious concern about the TTP inside Afghan Taliban ranks. They are advising their top leadership that these TTP militants, when they are moving around in a state with arms, and they are a very powerful armed group. So this is a fear which is also very much high in the Kabul regime, that they can be counterproductive for them in future, even if they are going to shelter them. Yes, there are some Afghan Taliban elements who are totally supporting them, rather they are funding them, they are even sheltering them, and we have some
more than evident.
So yes, this is very open. But I think if they are not going to, follow what Pakistan is saying, then there is a very serious concern.
What is the consequence if these talks fail?
I think the consequences are very open. We are at war with them. This is very, very much clear by the Pakistan state policy, as Khwaja Asif was saying, but that would not be beneficial for both of the Pakistan and Afghanistan. So they have to rethink over it. Internally, I think there is likely to be an uprising, and it is very much there, because Ahmad Zia Massoud has started negotiating. He has asked his fighters to come over. Rashid Dostum is trying to, gather his support, and they are saying that it would be, drifting away from the main the Kabul regime. Hikmatyar, Gulbuddin Hikmatyar, he's also at odds. Even Sirajuddin Haqqani and Zabihullah Mujahid, they are not on one page on a number of issues. So they do have a lot of differences. And
do you feel these differences are going to play some kind of a role in a political change within Afghanistan that could pave the way for stability within the Afghan ranks and also stability vis-a-vis this terrorism?
I think there is no stability still, because this is a small group which is non-inclusive and being imposed by the US-led coalition on the Afghan people. They were expecting that there would be a conclusive government which will be having all the stakeholders. But I think entire northern region is out of the government ambit. They don't have any say in the central policies of the Kabul. And now they are feeling terrified because their rights are not being protected by the Kabul regime. So this is very important. And the only thing I think, Russia is very much annoyed with them, China is very annoyed with them, Iran is feeling threatened, because the regional countries, they are literally worried about the way the militant groups are actively being supported, they are actively being operating. It's not only TTP or BLA, you have ISK, you have Al-Qaeda, you have the Ansar al-Islam of the Turkmen militant groups, you have ETIM. China is very much worried. You have, the Afghan Taliban are so, deceptive that even they cancelled a huge deal with the Chinese firm for $50 million, and now this deal has been now offered to an American petroleum company. So how double standard these Afghan Taliban regime might be, yet it's very much open. So I think if the issue of this mistrust continue, not only Pakistan but Iran is wary of them. Chinese are very much worried.
All they need to do is stop this terrorism. All they need to do is dislodge themselves from these terrorist networks, especially Fitna al-Kharij and all the others, and move in the right direction. The other countries are here to help them. But I fail to understand, I really fail to understand why things are not moving the way they should. And for which reason and which political or geostrategic reason the Afghan Taliban have in order to do whatever they are doing. They are destabilizing their own country, they are destabilizing the entire region, and at what cost? We have to go to our next story now, and the next story concerns the Jammu Martyrs Day that is being observed today across the world, especially from the people, the Kashmiris within the Pakistani and across the border in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. It was on this very day that hundreds of thousands of Kashmiris were martyred while they were moving within Jammu on the time of independence. And this is something that the Kashmiris haven't forgotten. Why? Because their right to self-determination to this day has been denied to them. The Indian government refuses to give them this right to self-determination. The Indian government does not even want to give them their basic human rights as we speak. And that is what leads to so many uncertainties and so many people talking about what they need, what they are entitled to, and what they are not being given. And that is what we also celebrate today, observe today, in fact, as far as the Jammu Martyrs Day is concerned. We need to remind the world and continue to tell them of what the Indians have been doing since 1947, continue to do so in 2025. We've been joined by Mushaal Mullick. She's the former advisor to the Prime Minister and the chairperson of the Peace and Culture Organization, and also she's the wife of a leading Kashmiri Hurriyat leader, Yasin Malik. Thank you very much, Mushaal, to have joined us. It's a very important day today for Kashmiris. It's a very important day for you also, because how your husband is incarcerated and how you've seen firsthand how the Kashmiris from across the border are being treated by the Indians. How is the Jammu massacre, Mushaal, of November 1947 remembered amongst the Kashmiris today across the world? And why do, in your point of view, many describe it as the earliest and the most extensive episode of ethnic cleansing since the Second World War?
Yes, hello, thank you for inviting me to your show. We have so many countless massacres, but especially this one of 1947 of 6th November. Remembering it is an act of demanding, I think, not just remembering history, but also demanding some justice, because there's complete immunity with the occupation, be it the forces of Maharaja, the RSS at that time, or the Indian occupation at this time. So every commemoration is also a refusal to not bury the memories and sacrifices of our people. And those wounds, honestly, are not just traumatic, but also give us a way of hope, and I think also symbolize the very existence of our struggle against occupation, because it's our land, we are the heirs of that land, and how there was this cultural erosion and how it became, Jammu region became into the Hindu region. And I've been there quite a few times, and I've seen that after every few kilometers you have newly constructed mandirs over there in the past 70 years. So survivors, their stories, the divided lakhs of families that got separated, a lot of them are living within Pakistan, Azad Kashmir, and all over the world. So remembering the sacrifices of those generations, those forgotten stories, and this cycle of this denial, this which normalizes violence by, in our area. So I think it's very important.
Mushaal, you talk about denial. Mushaal, you talk about denial. I'd like to understand why to this day are we seeing so many denials that are happening as far as the Indians are concerned, whether it be the Jammu Martyrs Day, and that is what has been highlighted by the speakers at today's commemoration also. They argue that successive Indian administrations have attempted to erase or minimize the 1947 killings from historical records. What impact does this historical erasure have on collective memory and reconciliation efforts?
Yes, you're right about that. Like, especially in the educational textbooks, they've removed it. It's silent. There's false narratives that's thriving over there. Documentation of the real truth of what happened during this massacre is so essential for our future generations to remember, and also for historians how it has been wiped out. So every survivor that we have within, I think, Pakistan and Azad Kashmir from the Jammu massacre, those divided families living abroad, it must be documented, not just as a testimony, but also as a fact of the sacrifices. And this documentation can collectively, if it's done, we can demand justice. We can even demand the state subject of all those families that left their homes, and with the hope that one day they will return. But unfortunately, a lot of them died in Pakistan and Azad Kashmir, just waiting for that beacon of hope that maybe someday the gateways will open. So I think this is a very important point that you've raised, because historically speaking, legally speaking, because history has repeated itself, especially after this massive massacre. Over 4 to 5 lakh Muslims were slaughtered by the RSS, which is in power right now, and the Maharaja forces, that if we collect a collective petition by all those victims or those divided families living within here and abroad, demanding their state subject, especially after 5th August, because that too was a lawfare and an open call for genocide and erasing the Kashmiri people.
That's true, but Mushaal, Kashmiri leaders today have also stressed that observing Jammu Martyrs Day is not only about remembrance, but is also about reaffirming the right to self-determination. How do these commemorations continue to shape the contemporary freedom movement in the Indian-held valley?
Of course, it's whenever we remember their sacrifices, it does definitely. The moral promise becomes stronger again, that never again anywhere should this happen. It's unacceptable. And also to safeguard our future, that our demands are the same that were in 1947. Kashmiris want plebiscite, and this is unacceptable. And I think remembering is also a way of talking to the world that, violence and genocide and butchering is not the way. It's non-violence and dialogue and plebiscite. That should be the way forward. And all these testimonies, these remembrances, these mournings, they have never been able to erase the spirit of right to self-determination. The solution lies there in the UN resolutions. And I think when we remember this, we also would like to demand from the world that, when would we ever get access and monitoring
That is so
bodies to be
important.
allowed.
The demand from the world that the Kashmiris have been asking, you have yourself been asking in all the different fora, that the right to self-determination needs to be given to the people of the Indian Hill Valley, and that is not being given despite the countless number of resolutions that are present in the United Nations Security Council. Thank you very much, Mushaal, to have joined us. That was Mushaal Mullick, former advisor to Prime Minister and Chairperson of the PCO, joining us on this Jammu Martyrs Day. Zahir, I'd like to understand, the massacre is seen as a crime against humanity, yet the international bodies, the important countries, the power players are still not doing the needful after so many decades. What is stopping them?
Actually, I think this redundant UN system, I think it is not to protect the poor and the people who against whom the atrocities are being conducted. You have seen what happened in Gaza, how the Palestinians genocide was endorsed directly or indirectly by these powerful countries. But yes, within there are, what we were asking Mushaal, that if we keep on observing these days, what would be the benefit? Yes, it will continuously apprise the world that this is an atrocity, you must have to stop it. And if you see the RSS and the Hindutva, that ideology is very much here to follow what the Israelis are doing in Gaza. This Srinagar 235 plan by the RSS and the Indian Army. So we have to stress the international community to the Indian government must take back this Article 370, 35A, and what is being done, dislodging the Kashmiris from their own homes, forcibly, converting their population as a minority by bringing in the Hindu extremists to this region. I think this is a very serious violation. And if we keep on highlighting this issue, I think the
fact that Pakistan, at least, I mean, I can speak for Pakistan, we have highlighted it so many times on so many different fora. It seems to fall on deaf ears. There are statements, there are some kind of resolutions that come out, but those are never implemented into real action. And that is the key word: implementation needs to happen, action needs to be taken against all the atrocities that the Indians are doing.
I think Pakistan has a very golden chance now. After this May 9 incident, we have a very powerful diplomatic win all over the nation. The people are, the superpowers are, accepting Pakistan's narrative on a number of issues, and this is the time we must take up the Kashmir issue. And even now it is proved that how the state terrorism, the Indian sponsored state terrorism is not only doing a genocide of the Kashmiris, but even they are working as a state sponsored terrorism on the western side of Pakistan. So obviously, you have to take up this issue with the
colluding with the Afghan Taliban as well against Pakistan, as they have this Pakistan anti-Pakistan narrative that they have been working on since decades. Zahir, Shah, Sherazi, thank you very much to have joined us. We have to now move towards regional connectivity. Ladies and gentlemen, this is something that we also highlighted yesterday. Regional connectivity in the region, Pakistan working on different fora with the other countries in the region is very important. And we've gotten hold of Dr. Kharel, the Executive Director of the Kathmandu-based think tank South Asia Watch on Trade, Economics and Environment, otherwise known as SAWTEE. Dr. Kharel is an economist who is specializing in international trade and development, and he is a prominent figure as far as discussions and research concerning Nepal's trade policies, regional integration and economic development issues are concerned. Thank you very much, Dr. Paras, to have joined us, to have given us this time, and of course to be here on our show Beyond Borders. Dr. Paras, I have many interesting questions, but I'll begin with Nepal, which is a landlocked country. How important is the strengthening of internal and external trade, environment, connectivity and regional integration for your country?
We know from research that in order to achieve sustained poverty reduction and achieve sustainable growth and development, a huge market is needed. And for most countries in the world, a huge market is possible only if it integrates itself with the rest of the world. And Nepal, with a population of 30 million, needs the whole world as a market in order to achieve diversification in production and achieve economies of scale. In that context, integrating with the rest of the world is very important. And our competitiveness is dented by a range of factors, including high costs, low productivity, and high cost is partly due to high logistics cost, including importing and exporting goods, the time and cost associated with importing and exporting goods. So in that context, expanding and deepening connectivity with those in the region, those who are your immediate neighbors, India, China, as well as countries in the neighborhood, for example, Bangladesh, which is, say, just about 55 kilometers away from Nepal's border, as well as other South Asian countries like Pakistan, Sri Lanka, would be critical for Nepal to diversify its economic and connectivity ties.
All right, you talked of connectivity. Let's talk about Pakistan's connectivity drive. We are part of CPEC and of course, which is the leading part or component of the Belt and Road Initiative. What's your take on the BRI and the CPEC as a game changer for this region and beyond?
So things have changed dramatically over the last 30 years or so. And this question, I think, might not have arisen if China had not grown so fast, lifted poverty on such a dramatic scale, and become an economic superpower. Who would have even thought, I might dare ask, about the CPEC, say 30 years ago? But it's here. And observers like me in Nepal, for example, are actually looking carefully, to the extent possible, at CPEC, because it is, if I am not mistaken, supposed to be the jewel in the crown, so to speak, of BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative. Nepal is also part of the Belt and Road Initiative. Half a dozen or slightly fewer projects have been identified under the Belt and Road Initiative, but implementation so far remains weak. And I think going forward, how CPEC functions, delivers, will also help other countries decide on how to implement BRI going forward. And in the case of Nepal, because it is a landlocked country, it has always emphasized diversifying its trade and transit ties. For example, Nepal signed a transit agreement with China in 2016, and in 2019 a protocol was also signed, right? And ultimately, commercial interests will to a large extent determine which transit routes we will use, but option is always there. And joining BRI by Nepal was also partly motivated by the desire to diversify its trade, connectivity ties. And since, as I understand, Pakistan is also fast deepening and enhancing its ties with not just other countries, but in particular Central Asian and Middle Eastern countries, and including with China, it's not far-fetched, I think, say in 15 years down the line, or 20 years down the line, and we must think long-term, for Nepal to even trade with Pakistan through China, given the fact that we are trying to invest in upgrading our connectivity with China, and China is improving its physical connectivity with Pakistan, and thereby with Central Asia and even the Eurasian region.
All right, Dr. Paras, you emphasize and have emphasized during our conversation as well on a deep nexus between trade and climate change. What are the contours of this nexus from a regional perspective?
Now, trade impacts climate change and vice versa. For example, trade entails production as well as transportation, which results in emissions and contribute to climate change. At the same time, trade, by fostering and enhancing efficiency or improving access to green technology products and technologies, can also help mitigate the consequences of climate change. On the other hand, climate change, say through extreme weather events like hurricanes and floods, can destroy trade infrastructure and hurt trade. It can impact agriculture and shift comparative advantage in agriculture within a country as well as across the region and the globe. So this is the contour of climate change. And in the context of Asia and South Asia, there is also an emerging issue in the trade and climate change nexus. It is that in order to, in the name of mitigating the impact of climate change, countries in the world are coming up with sustainability-based measures. For example, the carbon border adjustment mechanism in the European Union, for example, or the deforestation related regulations in Europe, and a range of advanced countries are in the process of unveiling such measures. And these measures could hurt the competitiveness of developing countries like Pakistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, India, right? And here the main challenge is not so much the measures themselves, but the cost of complying with those measures. For example, there might be a deforestation related measure, say in Europe, which bans imports into Europe of agricultural products produced in developing countries like, say, Pakistan or Nepal, that have been produced by clearing forests. Now, it could be that we are producing such agricultural products without clearing or deforesting forests. But the point is, we need to prove that that was not the case. And proving it, complying with that regulation, verifying it entails cost. And that cost is beyond the reach of many small-scale producers.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paras. Kharel joined us, and of course to have given us not only a perspective from the Nepalese point of view, but also talking about the CPEC and the BRI that is extremely important for Pakistan, and I'm sure for so many other countries in the region as well, and as it is for you in Nepal as well. Let's look forward to a more robust CPEC and BRI in the coming months and years. Let's now take you to China, where the 8th China International Expo is happening in Shanghai. It's a huge event. People from more than 150 countries are participating in it, including from Pakistan. And of course, that is highlighting and showcasing many of the important economic avenues and talents that China has and China can showcase in the coming days and weeks as well. We've been joined by Qinduo, who is a senior fellow at Pangoal Institute in Beijing online. Thank you very much, Shu, to have joined us. Now, since launching in 2018 as China's first national level import themed expo, the China International Import Expo has been described as a major step in China's support for trade liberalization and global economic openness. How you would assess the impact that the CIIE has had so far in advancing that very agenda?
Well, thank you for having me. That's a good question. If you look at the time of the past 8 years, for example, since 2018, China first launched this import expo, the first in the world, and the only country so far in the world, to welcome imports from other countries. That's a move of openness. That's a move to embrace the rest of the world. That's a move to integrate China with the rest of the world. And also remember, in 2018, it's also the first time the US imposed tariffs on Chinese goods, the so-called tariff war or trade war on China. Over the past years, since Trump first term and then Biden and Trump again, we have seen the U.S. increases its protectionism or unilateralism by imposing more tariffs, more restrictions of export, of technology, for example. China is choosing the opposite path of openness and free trade, basically. So what we have seen is like China has been on the rise in terms of its economic power, in terms of its trade power, the largest trading partner of more than 150 countries and regions, and also second largest economy, or the first largest, the largest economy in the world, depending on your calculation. So I think free trade, openness, has produced a very positive result for China, at least to say here about China.
All right, sure. I'd also like to understand the 2025 edition of the CIIE is reported to feature participation from 155 countries. I said that in the beginning as well, from regions, international organizations, and more than 4,100 overseas enterprises. What, in your point of view, does this level of international engagement tell us about China's role in the global trade system today?
Well, that's an interesting topic here. I think, if you look at the size of the Chinese economy, that I have said, and also the size of its population of 1.4 billion consumers, And if you look at the recent documents about the 15th five-year plan starting from next year, so China's middle incomer would be about like 800 million people. That's probably the largest middle income, let's say, group in the world, and that would be more or less one of the largest market, if not largest. So I think for countries around the world, if you have a presence in China and you want to increase your presence in China and strengthen the brand, the image of your products, of your country, and so you can find a niche market in part of the Chinese market. It's very large. Remember, like a lot of provinces and cities. For example, like wine, red wine. China imports red wine from many countries, from say Chile, from the United States, from European countries, even from Azerbaijan and from many other countries. Probably people are not fully aware of. For example, Azerbaijan, they sell their products usually at the second-tier cities and third-tier cities. You wouldn't find the products in Beijing, Shanghai, and other first-tier cities. But if you go to the middle sized or the small sized cities, you would find their products. I think they are very smart in promoting their products and also find the niche market for them in China. So in that sense, I think, yes, it matters a lot as long as China maintains openness and choose openness and free trade and free markets, and that will keep globalization or regional economic integration alive for the time to come.
Last question, Shu. Looking ahead, what should be the next generation role for the CIIE in a world of shifting supply chains, rising protectionism and digital trade? And how can the event evolve to remain relevant and deliver long-term benefits for both China and its international partners as well?
That's a good question. I think if you look at WTO, the most important multilateral body globally, developing countries in general benefits from this process of globalization and free trade, as long as you have a wise policy, for example. China benefited a lot from this whole process since joining WTO like 24 years ago. And, with this globalization, you have investment, you have a larger market beyond your own market. Basically, you can, export your products or do business with the rest of the world. So the market, whether a country is large or small, as long as they choose free trade, as long as they choose integration rather than isolation, as long as they choose free markets here, and together with good governance domestically, usually they can benefit a lot more from this whole process by welcome investment, by welcome imports, of course, also export, strive to export more to the China market, for example, and then will create more jobs, create more revenue, and bring about more affordable products for their own people. And then,
that is, of course, very important. But I thank you so very much, of course, again, Shu Qinduo, Senior Fellow at Pangoal Institute in Beijing, to have joined us, to have given us the perspective of how important this this moot is, not only for China, but for different countries across the world. And I can understand, and I can see, and I can look forward, as I'm sure many other people from Pakistan and from across the board are also looking forward as to how important this is going to be and how beneficial it's going to be for them. Let's now take you to Middle East and North Africa. The killings of Palestinians in Gaza continues despite the fact that a ceasefire agreement is signed, despite the fact that this very ceasefire agreement has been shared, the draft of which has been shared at the United Nations Security Council with partner nations to push forward this peace plan, providing more details on international security force. And this was done by Mike Waltz, who is the US ambassador to the United Nations, who more or less struck an optimistic tone. But on the other hand, we also see the killings that the Israeli forces are doing, and Palestinians, and 6,800 plus Palestinians have been killed since October 2023. So far, 170,679 have been injured since October of 2023. Let's continue or try to stay cautiously optimistic as far as the future of this peace plan and the future of peace for the people in Palestine is concerned. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's Beyond Borders. It has been an interesting ride so far this week as well, and as was it today. We talked about China, we talked about different parts of Asia, and of course about the Middle East as well, and we'll continue to do so in the shows that will follow. We'll continue to bring you stories from a world without borders and boundaries and bring you perspectives that are extremely important, neutral and newsworthy. Till the next program next Monday, take care of yourselves. Allah Hafiz.